Wait, what? What? Oh, hi there, kiddies. I'm Joke Man, and you're watching Channel Pop. Don't forget to subscribe.
So, I, for one, am extremely excited about Spider-Man Far From Home, mainly for the reason that we're getting the first officially red and black Spider-Man suit on screen, much like those early Steve Ditko days. Also the fact that we're getting Mysterio, and he's my favourite Spider-Man villain, and I, for one, never thought that we'd ever get to see Mysterio in a film in a design that even harkens remotely back to his comic book designs with the fishbowl on their head and everything. But look at what Marvel Studios have done. They've brought us Mysterio, complete with fishbowl, green togs, golden armor on the chest, which is new, but I like it, and a big flowing purple cape, and he looks incredible. I am so happy. I never thought they'd go quite that far with it, because Marvel Studios villains, they're not always comic book accurate from a design standpoint. Remember Zemo in Captain America Civil War? I didn't see any purple bag on his head. So, in sort of anticipation of this, I'm going to be looking back with you guys over at the previous Spider-Man films and ranking them. So here are my ranking for the original Spider-Man movies. In 7th place we have The Amazing Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man, for me, it kind of pivots between whether or not it's better or worse than The Amazing Spider-Man 2. The thing with The Amazing Spider-Man is it completely does a big disservice to the character of Peter Parker. You see, Peter Parker, even before the Spider-Bite, is a man of sort of a sense of morality and everything, and is part of his upbringing and everything, but they made him such a rebel in this movie. He goes around things in such a very immoral, unconventional way, such as, you know, stealing the guy's ID for the Oscorp internship, robbing that guy of what could be the opportunity of his lifetime, you know? There are so many occasions in this film where I just look at Peter Parker and I'm like, ah! I deserve to be Spider-Man more than you do, and half of the people watching this film deserve to be Spider-Man more than you do. See, Spider-Man doesn't work if Peter Parker doesn't deserve to be Spider-Man in the first place. It's part of what gives us this massive catharsis for the character and a big amount of sympathy, and Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker just doesn't earn that for me. But what makes it worse, and is the absolute breaking point for me, is that he had no part in Uncle Ben's death in this film. They just made it so that the two had a bit of an argument beforehand, completely missing the point of this character. He's not motivated by revenge like he is in The Amazing Spider-Man 1. He's motivated by taking responsibility for a boo-boo that he did, you know, a bad judgment call. And he's taking responsibility for that and taking on board Uncle Ben's mantra. We never really get an impression of that in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but what's worse for me is that we see scenes of him letting criminals go just because they're not the ones that killed Uncle Ben, even though they are still a threat to the innocent people of New York City. This Peter Parker is not a good hero for me, nor is he a good hero. But what I will give the film kudos is it does have some really nice cinematography and some great moments in the third act, especially the crane scene, which doesn't truly make any sense, but it's filmed, scored, and acted so well that I find myself coming back to it. However, yeah, like, the story of it is a bit of a mess because it drops plot threads kind of as it goes. It kind of forces itself to become a Spider-Man film when it's moving down a different path for much of the first half of the film. It's Peter Parker looking for his parents, looking for answers and stuff, and we see him being this absolute vigilante that's only looking for one killer and only one criminal, yet suddenly in the second half of the film we then go into a traditional Spider-Man story where he's fighting the Lizard and taking down Science Institute number 6, basically. So yeah, for me, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 is the worst, solely based on that it's not the most entertaining Spider-Man movie of all, and its story is a mess, and it's just a real disservice to the character of Peter Parker. Redeeming qualities, Rhys Ifans as the Lizard, and the special effects work is great for him, and I also really like Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben. In 6th place we have The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is often the bottom of my pile. I think I hate The Amazing Spider-Man 2 more than I hate any other Spider-Man film because it's the laziest one by far in terms of writing and character handling. However, The Amazing Spider-Man 2's redeeming quality is that it does at least feel a little bit more event status than The Amazing Spider-Man 1. What I'll give to it is I find myself looking up clips from The Amazing Spider-Man 2 on YouTube and watching them in isolation and being much more entertained than I do with anything from The Amazing Spider-Man 1. Virtually anything with Electro. When the film drops the whole pretense of, oh, the untold story, and just becomes a massive lull, with Electro making electric puns and Dr. Kafka being, you know, the typical German scientist and everything. That's when this film is at its best for me. And like, there's also the power plant showdown, which no one ever like talks about or anything. I still find that pretty exhilarating to watch, even though it is certainly below the standard of a typical Spider-Man action sequence. And that's also my problem with the Amazing Spider-Man movies, is their action sequences are so tame. Like the Times Square showdown, that's the scene most people talk about when they talk about the Amazing Spider-Man 2 in a positive light. What actually happens there in that conflict? They exchange a few words, and then they just kind of do a turns-based battle with Electro firing electricity and Spider-Man web-whipping at him. But where is the actual fight? Where's the actual excitement? They're just scrapping around on the floor for most of it, and it's a complaint I have with the Amazing Spider-Man 1, although I did really like the school fight. But yeah, those Amazing Spider-Man movies, to say they weren't for me is an understatement. I think I especially hated the thing about the Amazing Spider-Man 2 being that the mild-mannered Peter Parker facade is completely gone now, as Peter Parker kind of runs up to Gwen Stacy on the stage of their graduation, makes out with her in his PJs, and then high-fives the guy running the place and everything, and it's just, that's not Peter Parker, at least not at this stage. It's not Peter Parker, for me anyway. He lost all that sense of relatability. Peter Parker is not a salon-quality hair guy wearing Thrasher t-shirts, skateboarding around, Mr. Cool, you know? He's not a greaser. He's mild-mannered wallflower Peter Parker, and even in the alternate comics, he's still more of a mild-mannered wallflower when he's at that sort of age and everything. So, I think the biggest offense with this was that they completely lost track of the original the original vision of this interpretation of Spider-Man. The original vision that it was going to be more of a searching for answers kind of story and more of a conspiracy theory sort of thing, and that's in there, but it is so half-baked and utterly boring. And I'll say this against the Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it's the reason why I often put it below the Amazing Spider-Man 1 when talking about it, is that the third act of the Amazing Spider-Man 2 is like watching paint dry. It's so boring, and no one ever talks about that. It's really boring. Coming in at 5th place is Spider-Man 3. Now, the thing is, I really like this movie, to be honest. Like, it is a massive misstep for the Raimi trilogy. Like, it's a huge misfire. They got so much wrong with this film. Going from its unfocused narrative to sort of not getting the right balance with the juxtaposition between red suit Spider-Man and black suit Spider-Man. It's like the whole point is the black suit makes him act, you know, like a jerk, but he's already acting like a jerk before he gets the black suit in this film, and I think that's the thing it does wrong the most. People often criticize it for having too many villains, but I don't get how you can complain about too many villains when it has a freaking dance scene in a jazz cafe where Peter Parker is swinging his hips left and right, and there's like voices in the background going, yeah, sexy, and stuff like, it's like, what the heck kind of movie is that? Same timestamp in the previous film, Spider-Man 2, we were fighting Doc Ock in front of a train. In this one, we're dancing in a jazz cafe, and there's so many scenes that I don't care about, like Harry Osborn and Mary Jane making eggs, and like using amnesia as a reason to just shove Harry out of the film and everything, just for a bit while they tried to focus on Peter's sort of inner demons. There was too much going on. Too many villains, not so sure, but there was definitely abundance of things going on in this film that worked against it. Venom is not a key point of criticism for me. I think he actually worked pretty well, because the thing is, like, Venom is supposed to be like the manifestation of Peter's negative image, you know? He's supposed to be like the exact opposite of Peter Parker Spider-Man, and that's exactly what Eddie Brock and Venom in this film were. No, they weren't a big hulking beast and everything, so yeah, it does detract from the comic version in some regard, but I really did like the fact that they went as far as, you know, Eddie Brock is completely irresponsible and refuses to take responsibility for anything, takes his anger out on Peter, takes his anger out on Mary Jane, takes his anger out on Gwen Stacy, takes his anger out on literally everybody and anybody. He's a sleazy, nasty scumbag, complete opposite of Peter Parker. So then he's in the Venom costume with a sort of a physique much closer to Peter Parker's, and he's got like webs on the costume, really accentuating the whole negative reflection. It's like, to a lot of people, me included, Venom is sort of like Spider-Man's evil twin in a way. And I feel like Sam Raimi really went the whole hog with that and made something that works. The only thing I really resented was the fact that every time he talked, his cool Venom face was peeled back, and then like, where's the fun in that, to be honest, you know? So, yeah, Spider-Man 3, not a bad film. A lot of people don't give it enough credit for its performances, for its directing, for its score. Like, the score of this film is amazing. The musical moments are firing off on all cylinders with every instrument, especially during that final battle in the third act. It's dramatic, it's exciting. I think my favorite moment is when, like, Spider-Man's just been kicked down to the ground, and, like, Sandman is down there as well, and he's making his way up to Mary Jane. The Spider-Man theme is in full swing. Mary Jane's looking down and almost like forgiving and stuff. And then the music all stops when Venom just goes punt into Spider-Man like that. And it's just, it goes back to Venom's theme and everything. Like, the use of music in this film was phenomenal. It was very well directed. Also, how can I hate a film that's got J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson and Mr. Ditkovich in it? Like, come on. So, in fourth place, and this is a strange one because a lot of people don't put it here, I'm going to put Into the Spider-Verse. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore Into the Spider-Verse, and like kind of from Spider-Man 3 onwards, I really hold all of these films in a very, very, very high regard, so don't think that's anything negative against Into the Spider-Verse. I didn't expect this film to be good. I expected it to be sort of a Sony desperate attempt at making lots of merch and everything, and that's far from what this was. The animation in this film, everyone always talks about that. Phenomenal. The use of music in the film, while it's not music I'd usually listen to with the exception of maybe Sunflower, it's phenomenal. Like, every single filmmaking aspect that could contribute to this film contributed to it in a way that we haven't seen in quite a long time. And that's what I really loved about this, was just the filmmaking, but the story as well is really profound, and the use of different spider people in the story really contributes to Miles Morales as a character and his independence as a Spider-Man more than I'd expected. I thought it was just going to be like, ah, okay, so it's Miles Morales except Peter Parker's now a mentor. No, it is not that. It is Peter Parker's there, he's working with Miles, but Miles has to do this himself. And I love that story. And like, Kingpin was a really good villain, and the performances were great. I never thought Chris Pine would ever make a good Spider-Man, but now I'm kind of like, I'd kind of like to see that, actually. So yeah, for all the reservations I had about that film, I ended up loving it, so I'm thrilled to say that. In third place, we have the one that started it all, Spider-Man 1 from 2002, Sam Raimi's classic film. I freaking love this film. It's amazing in my opinion, from the acting to the directing to the action sequences. Sure, things don't feel quite as natural as they'd go on to in Spider-Man 2, as some of the dialogue is very kitsch, very retro and stylized, but the thing is, I defy anyone that says, oh, it's age badly and it's cheesy. No, it's stylized. It's stylized like a retro comic book, and just everything about this film is just so special. But as well as that, it's the historical impact that this film has when you think about it, because the 9/11 attacks had just happened. It crippled America's sort of attitude. They'd, you know, crippled the New York spirit, you know, like New York used to be sort of like a, I got you God right here in my tall buildings sort of a place. And then 9/11 comes along, people are living in fear, people are upset. And then this film comes along and reignites a sense of pride in New York City, especially with this one particular scene at the Brooklyn Bridge, where the Goblin is like floating around, he's got the upper hand against Spider-Man and everything, and the New York people all band together and start pelting him with stuff. It's like, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. It's incredible. Like, everyone says that seems cheesy, but it's so uplifting. Like, how can you not like that? I love that stuff. I love the New Yorkers banding together thing, because it makes New York a character, and that is so important. World building in a very characterized, influential way is so important in film, and Spider-Man 1 has it in spades, as well as the superb performances. The standout for me is Willem Dafoe, and how quotable the Green Goblin is. You know, you can always find things that the Goblin said to say in actual conversation thing. It's like, the thing is, I am a degenerate nerd. That's the thing, is like, I'll be in mid-conversation, and I'll just be like, hey, you coming out Friday night? And they'll be like, nah, mate, sorry, I got essays. I'm like, no one says no to me! You know, like, this is so quotable. And also, there's the scene where Norman Osborn finds out that Peter is Spider-Man is extremely well directed. Like, the sort of suspense of it really keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's filmmaking you don't get a lot of these days, you know? And then there's the whole bit with, like, him bursting through the window and Aunt May is like, finish it! Like, it's so dark. Like, it's so daring. So, like, yeah, no, that's That's why Spider-Man 1 is so high up on this list for me. In second place, we have Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man Homecoming was a dream come true for me, let's be honest here. I don't subscribe to the notion that he doesn't act like Peter Parker and that the whole power and responsibility thing has gone out the window, because it hasn't. It's there in Peter. It's there in sort of how he acts very righteously. He wants to help out. And Tom Holland makes an incredibly likable Peter Parker. But what I also love about this is the subtle genre subversion. Like, I mentioned in the Amazing Spider-Man films that the action sequences were very underwhelming, and in this film the action sequences are nothing to write home about. But this film is not driven by its action sequences in the way that the Amazing Spider-Man films tried to be. They're not there as set pieces. We see a lot of Spider-Man this time, and it's the first Spider-Man film we had where we see more of Peter in the costume than we did as Peter Parker. And that was a dream come true for me and all, but like the way everything looked, it had a very John Romita Sr. look to the Spider-Man costume, and Vulture looked very Ditko. We have multiple villains and they made it work. And I like the story of Peter Parker sort of chasing up this sort of underground business and everything. And like the character of Ned Leeds and the sort of chemistry he has with him, as well as the other students of Midtown High. I think the Washington Monument scene remains one of my favourite scenes in an MCU movie to date, because it's so suspenseful, and I legitimately fear for their lives, you know? And the thing with Spider-Man Homecoming is they knew where to cut the jokes, or how to make the jokes contribute to the suspense of the scene, unlike, say, the first act of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, where you have like the spaceship hurtling down, and you just cut to like Groot eating M&Ms and stuff. It takes you out of the moment. But Spider-Man Homecoming and Thor Ragnarok, surprisingly, and a lot of films after that really sort of got a grip on where to use the jokes and where to not, you know. First place, we have Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 is one of my favourite films of all time, period. For every single gosh darn reason. It is the definitive growing up everyman tale. Peter Parker in this film is so relatable because he's got something he's got to do and he knows he's got to do it. But the truth be told, he's finding himself asking, do I not deserve a happy life? And that is the existential question of Spider-Man 2 is, should Peter Parker get what he wants? And the thing is, they know just where to cut it. I know that High Top Films made a video essay talking about the importance of the scene in Spider-Man 2 where Ursula comes to him and is like, hey, would you like some chocolate cake? And it comes at just the right time. Peter's at his lowest point, and the film knows when to introduce a positive thing for him to be happy about. The story of Peter Parker has never felt quite so very Ditko as it has in Spider-Man 2. And that's what I really love about it, and also the profound messages that you can actually carry into real life. It's got a lot of teachable moments, especially the moment where Aunt May is like, there's a hero in all of us, you know, but the thing is, like, sometimes to do the right thing you have to go steady and give up the thing you want the most, even your dreams. And like, that message is haunting. It's utterly haunting, and I still think about it to this day, and it still comes to mind when confronting real-life adult situations that we have to face. Spider-Man 2 is the definitive coming-of-age movie for me, and like, for that reason it's also the best Spider-Man film. But might I also add, while it nails the Peter Parker elements of the film, it also nails the Spider-Man elements of the film with flying colours. The action sequences in this film are the best and most emotionally driven they have ever been in a Spider-Man film. I think my favourite is the scene with Aunt May on the side of the bank and Doc Ock and Spider-Man are throwing down. And what I love so much about this movie, that Spider-Man movies since have not quite got, is that Spider-Man 2 had a sense of urgency in its action sequences, in which we saw Peter actually throw punches at the enemy, just trying to sort of pummel them into submission. Whereas in the new ones, it's all very much about web stunts and creative abilities and stuff, and yeah, that's fun to watch, but I don't get the same sense of emotional, urgent engagement with that as I do when Peter Parker is done doing all the stunts, in he comes with a fist, you know? And like, you really do see a lot of him and Doc Ock punching each other, and I haven't even mentioned, Doc Ock is a perfect villain in this film. He's sympathetic, but he also knows when to really dial up the antagonism to 100. It's absolutely outstanding in terms of performance from Alfred Molina, and I truly, truly, truly treasure this film more than any other film I know, to be honest. Not as much as Toy Story, or maybe just equal as Toy Story, I'd say. But yeah, so that was my ranking of all the Spider-Man films. What do you guys think? What is your favourite Spider-Man film? Comment below and discuss. And as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want more like it, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and if you've done that already, what a trooper you are. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and have a great day.